I'll kind of slide over you.
This question comes from an anonymous person.
All anonymous clients.
Shut up.
You probably have your zinger in this one.
They are legion.
He's going to come up with the clincher.
What is your definition of the sacrament of marriage? I'm assuming that has the homosexual connotation in there. Like, is that part? That's what I'm assuming.
Oh.
I don't want to assume anything if that's anybody's question.
Of marriage?
What is the definition of marriage?
The sacrament of marriage.
A man and a woman that pledge themselves to be loyal to each other and to have children till death.
What if they don't have children?
Well, I mean, if you can't have them or something.
What if they
The
don't want to
idea
have
is,
children?
huh?
What if they don't want to have children?
Well, then that the Catholic Church would say that's a reason not to get married. That having children is fundamental to.
It might be a sign that maybe you have a
To
different
marriage.
religion.
Yeah. My mom told me that since I'm not dating now, or I've never been interested in it, she's just like, you're never going to get married if you don't get close. Get married.
I didn't date anybody at the law. Yeah, Joey's very hardcore about this in my opinion.
It's fundamental to it.
It's interesting, I was learning more about the Jewish faith, and that they pretty much have like a requirement that you have at least 2 children, I think it is. One to replace each person in the marriage.
Really?
Yeah. And maybe a third one. And ideally it'd be a boy and a girl, but you don't really have any control over that.
Yeah,
I thought it was really interesting.
And let it not go unnoticed, too, that obviously singlehood is a vocation as well. I mean, marriage is a vocation of the church, but also being single is too.
And being single is different than being a priest or a nun.
Yeah, I mean, being single, other than being a priest and a nun, is a calling from God. I mean,
Paul says it's higher. It's higher. Undistracted.
Yeah, Paul he wasn't big into the whole marriage thing.
No.
He didn't like it. All right. Well, here's your. If you could have one superpower question, we'll let you mull that one over. I'll give you another theological one. Is it accepted by the Catholic Church to have women giving out communion?
Yeah, right now it is. Eucharistic minister. I think that whole thing is abused though. This might be a little controversial. They're used too much. The rule actually says that if you have a large crowd and it's difficult for a priest to handle it, then you can have the Eucharistic ministry. But it's become where it's every time, no matter how big.
You see it like daily mass when there's like literally anyone there. It's like it's not needed, you know. Yeah.
That's not just me saying it. If you read books by Tim Aiken and Father Stravinsky about the Mass, they talk about that being so, but it is permitted.
Try your best not to touch their lip or
What are the differences?
It's like, oh.
like stuff it in there.
What are the differences between us and the Orthodox? That could take a little while.
Yikes. Well, the biggest one is they don't believe in the supremacy of the Pope. They have, they have different views of how they relate faith and reason. Like they would say, they don't get into speculating about the Eucharist. Because we talk about all this philosophical language and substance and accidents. And the Orthodox say, we just believe it, we don't try to explain it. This kind of thing.
That's kind of nice. I kind of like that.
Well, I mean, it's something to be said. Sounds like
I could get behind that.
I could.
they have married priests usually. That's another one. There's a bunch of stuff. The thing about the filioque way, which is complicated. That proceeds from the Father and the Son, the Holy Spirit. They think that's heretical. But you can make biblical arguments and arguments on the church fathers that I've done in my books. So those are some of the major things. But there's a lot more than that.
Okay, here's a good question. What does justification mean?
Being put in right relations to God, or almost like saying salvation, but it's a technical term of you're justified by faith through grace, through the work of Christ, but you also have to participate in it. You have to cooperate and do good works and show that it's genuine. It's not just a declaration. Protestants say God just declares that you're justified, and even if you sin, you're still justified anyway. That's where they go astray. Which was the big argument in 16th century when the Protestants broke off. Justification was a major issue. And the whole thing about faith and works, faith and works.
Yeah, what's that coming in? Okay. Are babies naturally evil?
Only in the sense that they have original sin. That people don't understand.
Unless they're
that.
colicky. Sorry for
Hey!
Sorry.
What's the
I'm the colicky baby.
Delicious.
Yeah, people don't understand if you say a baby has original sin. They say, baby's innocent, it can't do anything. It can't commit an actual sin. But it's still part of the whole human race that fell, like we talked about earlier. In Adam all fell. Therefore a baby, which is why we baptize babies, because they have original sin. But it's a particular sense. It's not an actual commission of a sin. Which would be around 5, 6, 7, what's called the age of reason. Okay, you've got more questions.
What's the difference between pride and being proud of something?
What was your question there? Yeah.
Difference between pride and being proud of something.
Yeah. Well, you say I'm, the typical one is I'm proud of my kids.
He is.
Now there's being proud of something and there's pride.
I did that on purpose for the example.
Yeah, if he's proud of me, being proud of me.
Now, I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't say I'm proud of you being proud of me.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that.
Too much pride.
Where pride is taking more credit to yourself than, it's like giving credit to yourself where God should get the credit. Say, I did this good thing. Well, Christian theology teaches that. Like I said earlier, every good thing we do has to be preceded by God's grace. He enables us to do it in the first place. So for us to take credit for that would be pride. It's putting our thing in the place of what God did, basically. I'm sure there's a better definition than that. But that's my Christian answer. Give them a bunch of
So, earlier you said, evil exists because we have free will and God doesn't want to intervene.
Yeah.
So, if that's true, then why do we have to thank God when we, why does God get to take the credit when we do something good? That was entirely us. We decided to do that because we have free will.
I just answered the previous one, because every good thing we do has to be provided by God's grace or enabled by God's grace. We cooperate with it, but we can't actually take credit for it,
But there's nothing wrong with being proud of your accomplishments or something. It's just pride's just any sin is an inordinate amount of something, right?
Yeah.
You're too proud of it is pride.
Yeah.
Well, it's
And
a
the
different
liberty
meaning,
is-
though. Being proud of your son or whatever is not a sin. It's just saying,
Right.
I'm pleased that they're Christians or whatever, Catholics.
Right.
If you keep going farther
Unless if
back,
you start boasting about it and whatnot too, that could be prideful.
If you say it's all everything they've done is because of me,
eventually, God
That
created
sounds
us,
familiar.
so,
as if
without being
sin, that kind of
So
thing.
should we give God credit for that too? Or,
for creating us.
You got more saying?
I do. We
if you're saying we should
think we got a little discussion going.
Huh?
creating us so that we could do good. Shouldn't we also thank God for
Is
creating
he
us
the
so
one
we
that
could
you're
do
talking
good?
about?
Because we couldn't do evil. if we
Well,
didn't
you
do
should
good.
thank
Yeah,
God
we
for
should
free
praise
will.
God for our free wills, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you shouldn't thank God that evil doesn't happen, but
But the choice that
but the freedom of the choice is a good thing.
because Jordan, if I was forced to love God, that's not true love.
I thought it was the brother of one of the
So the fact that
No.
God loved me so
Joey
much that
is.
He wanted
Oh,
to create
okay.
me so that I could love.
Joey and
I should
Rachel
thank
are
God.
brother and sister.
You know what I mean?
Alright, what do we
I'm not going to see him tomorrow for Easter.
I know.
So the age of reason, what about people
I would say
that
this every week, but text me and
have
I'll tell you.
at
least she was Snapchatting me this
or
morning.
born with disabilities or whatever, and they never answered
like uninconsiderate sin? Like people with like, I don't know, Down syndrome or something where
I
they're
don't
like.
read is on, so I don't want you to read
Yeah,
it.
they're generally thought
I just read the
less
message.
culpable than
Right.
culpable.
I'm really bad at that.
To blame for.
Well, have fun with. I'm assuming you're going somewhere.
Like, what about like their children and how much they got?
Me and her.
Like, are they
I
like
think
that
actually
kind
right.
together?
Are they like that?
Or like, do they have, are they still?
Oh, I
still-
doubt
They
it.
automatically love them.
No, like,
Like,
they
they still have
they
elements.
still have, like, adaptive different.
I think that they would be healed.
I would think God would heal them,
Yeah.
because it's not the way it was intended to be, you know.
Right.
Probably.
Bye, girls. Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Bye, girls. Bye.
Somehow, with all of the fall, all these bad things, so.
Okay.
They're going to the Bahamas for Easter, so.
Are those two are sisters?
No,
Yeah.
No.
practically.
Okay.
Yeah.
They look alike. You.
Alright.
Do we have any more?
He's the king of the question.
We do.
I know.
God wants us to make our decisions like entirely independent of them. Like He gave us free will so that we can make our decisions on our own.
Not
Not
like what I've been saying.
Okay, so what? Alright.
You have to be in accordance with His will.
But like, if He wants us to make, if He gave us free will so that we can make our decisions, so that we can choose from right or wrong, why does He give us His grace? Like, isn't that kind of like influencing our decisions? So like that we know, like giving us like, oh, that would be like the better choice. Like,
Well, how much
isn't
do
that
your
kind of-
friends influence your decisions?
Well, I mean,
They influence them, but you don't have to do what your friends say,
yeah,
right?
but my friends aren't God. Like they get
No, no, that.
like.
Great,
Apologist that says it.
No, to enable you to do something is not doing it for you.
No, I mean
I'm
like,
making you do
but
it.
doesn't like grace like give us more like make us more willing to do good things?
It helps us see why it's a
But then
better
doesn't
choice.
that like affect our decisions?
It does.
And like
But
so
But
you're
that's
willing,
not
you're
fair.
willing to
Telling me
accept it. We can either accept it. One analogy I use is a prisoner. Say a prisoner is pardoned by the governor. The prisoner could theoretically say, "I don't want your pardon." You know, so if he gets out and he's freed from his sin, so to speak, almost like forgiven of it, the governor made that possible. It wouldn't have happened without the governor. Yet the prisoner had to accept it. He could say, "I don't want it." If he does accept it, it had to come through the governor. The governor, of course, represents God. And so God gives you the grace to do good or bad. You can spurn that or you can work with it. There's some verses about that. It talks about being co-laborers with God, work together with God, this kind of thing.
And I think, so it's not like grace like forces us to do what's right, it just helps us see why it's a better choice.
I like that, yeah. It helps us to see why it's a good choice. Because you want to choose good
But actually
things,
to
right?
do it too.
You want to make wise choices that are good choices and want to make them, right?
And you don't want to value free will.
And Thomas
over
Aquinas says that grace is
whatsoever.
built on nature, so some people by their very nature are just like a sponge for God's grace.
And I think when we look at the saints, not every single one of them always had an easy time doing what God wanted them to do, or feeling like that it was an easy thing. Yeah, the dark night of the soul. And there's lots of things where that's the case. I mean, I don't know. My mom and I were having a discussion in the car today. A lot of those discussions in the car. And we were talking about how, like, not knowing what's going on. Like, we just have to kind of say, like, I trust you. Like, I don't know what you're doing, God, and I don't know if it's what I would do. But I'm going to trust you. And, like, in a way, He guides us to good things, and that's good grace. But we can always say no. You know, I mean, you still have that. Even if God shoves all the grace at you, you can still say no.
Yeah.
Do we have any more questions?
Yes, we do.
We got any more good questions out there? I know we're coming up with spur of the moment ones.
Okay, any more?
All right, here's another one. Why did Jesus always tell the people he healed? I wouldn't say always, but generally, why did Jesus tell the people that he healed, etc., not to tell others that it was he that had done it?
And then usually they ignore.
Yeah, usually they ignore him until anyway, but
Well, because when they did tell that it was him, that brought more attention to himself. In other words, it wasn't his time yet to be.
Glorified?
Yeah, he didn't want all the attention.
It's also not like,
You know, crowds and crowds. I think he wanted to deal more with individuals.
and weren't the Jews like, they were expecting like a social justice person to fix all of their social problems, and
Yeah.
that's not what Jesus came to do, you know? He came to give us salvation, not like earthly salvation, you know? Like, he came to like fix our souls, not necessarily like our worldly problems.
He wanted a slow reveal. Like, he didn't want it all at once.
Yeah, it's like that guy over there. Then he becomes like the magic man or something.
Exactly.
He's passing out, miracles over there, and then the human thing gets all caught up in that, where it's not God's purpose.
Would that also go back to when he said, like, blessed are those who do not see and believe? Would that kind of go back to that? Like, where he didn't want them to believe in him because of his miracles, but because of his teachings?
That's a great point, yeah. So that's where, with doubting Thomas, he said, blessed are those who believe yet have not seen. He's over there, I have to, unless I touch the wound in his side, he had to have this absolute proof. And Jesus says, you don't need that. You should just believe because I told you it's true, But yet he did provide the proof. That's kind of like an apologetic thing. That God's willing to provide the proof at times because he knows how human beings are, that they want to have a reason to believe.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a fine balance.
I don't really get that with the Thomas thing. Like, it kind of feels like Jesus is saying, like, no, you don't really need to prove anything. Just believe stuff that people tell you. You don't need to fact check things.
You don't need to have everything absolutely proven. That's what the point was. He's
I
saying,
told you that, so it must be real, right? Like you believe literally every single thing I tell you, right?
Well, it's Jesus though, you should.
But in effect, he's saying, well,
I'll take it.
you have this weakness that you can't believe unless you see the actual proof in front of you. So I'll come and bow to your weakness and prove it to you because that's what you need. But then he follows up and says, well, blessed are those who believe but haven't seen. That it's not absolutely necessary to have proof, In fact, I would say there's very few things that can be proved, period. Absolutely proven.
Yeah,
People always demand proof, but there's lots of stuff that you can't
I know. I'm just saying, generally, it's better to fact check things before you accept them as true. If someone claims to be Jesus, I would probably say, okay, show me that you're Jesus. Earlier, I'm pretty sure Marcus isn't actually God. He has demonstrated no,
I can guarantee Marcus is not God.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marcus.
he has demonstrated, but you actually don't really know that. He's just good at hiding.
But Marcus is a robot. He plugs in at night.
I think that depends on your definition of see also, the word see. Because you can see to believe and believe the glory of God through church teaching and revelation. I think Jesus is talking more about the physical see in that moment, if I'm correct in that, where we don't have to physically see it to believe, but we should fact check it and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean a lot of the church is about blind faith. That's a big thing that you have in the church. Most of the stuff I would say that we believe about the Catholic faith is kind of a blind faith. None of us have actually seen Jesus ourselves, but we believe that he did all this stuff for us. He died on the cross for us. That comes from tradition, from teaching, Bible, that kind of stuff. But yet we still believe, and we have that faith that if we do believe, we'll go to heaven. And I think that that's just what Jesus is trying to illustrate. If you believe in this stuff and you don't have to see it.
But he did provide proof in the first place by rising from the dead. Paul says 500 people saw him risen.
Yeah, but Thomas didn't
So
see that.
he provided this evidence. Hey, I overcame death and came back to you and ate with you and you touched me. So he showed that was God's way of saying, oh, I know how you guys are. You have to see the thing right in front of your eyes before you believe it. So I'll do that for you. I'll come back from the dead and I'll prove that I'm who I said I was.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. So that is part of Christianity, but us being 2,000 years away from that, we have to believe it in faith because we don't. I mean, we should accept the eyewitness testimony, but people tend to not do that. The further away in time it gets, then they say, oh, that was just a myth and didn't really happen or whatever.
Or since in Thomas's case it was a second-hand account. It was like, oh yeah, we saw Jesus. Thomas like, well, that's by this time it's second-hand. I don't know. And I think that has something to do with it too.
Possibly.
So it's
Second
okay,
or third hand.
It's okay to seek the rational. I mean, that's what apologetics is. That's what I do for a living. I'm always explaining by reason the faith. That's okay, but it's not. But having faith is primary. It's always above reason. That's what I'd say the Catholic view and most views of different Christians. Faith is primary, grace. That's all above reason without denying that reason is valid too. Because Jesus said, love God with all your strength, your heart, and your mind. He includes the mind in it. So it's definitely part of rationality. How many more are there over there?
We got 5. I don't know if
Okay.
we want to tackle all 5, but
I'll try.
just until Mrs. Albright says we're good over here.
No, I'm going to let it go. But I don't know if any of these parents are here. That's what I'm
Oh,
It's
You
20 to
guys
9.
well, that's bad.
You guys are ready?
But if you can do, 1 minute or less, that's
Okay.
5 minutes.
All right, this is the Viking round.
Okay,
You
here.
said you pressed it.
Maybe you'll have to call them on the phone. Okay, go.
What does the church teach about what happens at the end of our lives? What?
All right,
What does
guys.
the church teach? What does the church teach about what happens at the end of our lives?
We died.
You answered
Not easy.
Next question.
Well, it'd be purgatory or hell, and if you get to purgatory, you're going to heaven. So
Yeah, those in purgatory are saved and will go to heaven even.
there you go. All right.
Purgatory is not like the entrance to hell, it's the entrance to heaven.
If you
A
go
lot
to
of people
purgatory,
think
you're
it's
definitely
kind
going
of
to heaven.
So yeah,
Second
you made
hell or
it.
something.
Are the tragedies in recent years, going with this one, pointing to the second coming / the end of the world?
Possibly, but the world's been filled with tragedies the whole time, so
Yeah.
it's tough to say. It's pretty bad now, but we're also warned to not try to set dates and things. So we can't really do that. We can always say it may possibly be the end times. We should always live as if it was near the end. I mean, that's the key there.
Stupid Nostradamus. Why hasn't there been a more recent major court case regarding abortion? Kind of like a Roe v. Wade kind of thing, where it really affected it.
That's got nothing to do with apologetics.
We said anything. We didn't.
It just depends on what the Supreme Court, what they think is relevant in terms of law. There probably will be, because there's a lot of state laws now that are challenging.
Yeah, it's got little by little.
Limiting abortion. And there's going to be a challenge from the pro-aborts to that stuff.
All right, 3 to go. What is grace? Explain types of grace. But
Well, I mean, the
Just what
types, I'm not real big on all the different types of grace and that.
just go with what is then.
The basic definition is it's an ability to do good given by God, supernatural ability to do good. And it's often given through physical means. The sacraments are physical means to obtain the grace, baptism, Eucharist. What were you
We
going
have
to say?
natural grace,
Huh?
Amplified grace, actual grace.
Yeah, those I'm always confused about the different
I
kinds.
know.
These
I
grades are
remember
like
studying.
someone-
Marcus, remember studying those in 8th grade?
I remember studying them.
someone that's not
Over and over, it's like-
Christian, but is doing still practicing natural law and doing good. But is that God's grace, but somehow just because that person was created by God?
Yeah, it's going to be any good thing is going to be grace related somehow. Even the ability to do natural good.
Okay, so it's still.
It's probably one of those categories that I'm not clear about myself. But
Yeah, I think the actual grace is like grace without knowing God, and then sanctifying is like through
there's a thing called
knowing God,
prevenient
something
grace.
like that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I never heard of that.
Anyhow,
That could be your homework for next time.
Did you guys hear Claudia Mahaut's talk?
Or you got
Recent
both reaction regular.
probably,
It was
most
an
likely.
excellent talk. It
Good job.
cleared it all out. Yeah, like in half an hour, she just whacked it out of it all.
All right, so what do we believe about homosexuals going to heaven?
depends if they're chaste or not. I mean, that's the whole key. The church does not condemn the orientation. It condemns homosexual acts, which is a mortal sin because it goes against natural law and nature, according to Paul makes that argument in Romans 1:2, a couple other places. That's really what it comes down to.
But then mortal sin is boiled down to a couple more things, like knowing exactly what you're doing,
Right.
knowing that it's an offense to
Well,
God.
it's objectively mortal, but
Yeah.
subjectively is more of a complex issue, but that's how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, and again, people are obviously they're going to sin throughout their lives. So I mean, if they can be forgiven. So I mean, going to heaven, that's a tough question.
But they say, well, there's all these rules for homosexuals. Well, there's rules for everybody.
Yeah.
We can't have
We're all
sex
not to
before we
practice
get married.
chastity,
That's what the church teaches. You can't have sex outside of marriage. You can't do a number of things. Pedophilia and all this horrible stuff.
Yeah.
There's rules because it's designed for our happiness and our fulfillment. Sexuality. So it's not like God's to take away all your fun and all that. He wants us to be happy. And that's the way to do it.
And that's where theology's body comes in as well. Talk about that.
And I can attest that you will be happy. I've been married happily for 30 years. And by God's grace, I lived in the Christian way before I was married. So I'd like to testify to that. Right?
Praise God. Here's a miracle right there.
Pretty much is.
Good for the final question. I think this is a good one to end on. What is the difference in authority of Bible versus Vatican encyclicals and such if they are infallible from the Pope?
The difference between... Wait, read that again. This is important.
What is the difference in authority of Bible versus Vatican encyclicals and such if they are infallible from the Pope, in parentheses?
Well, practically they would be the same authority. The Bible has sort of primacy based on the fact that it's inspired. Inspired words, inspired revelation. That makes the Bible in a special category. But the Bible also has to be interpreted. This is the problem. The Protestant will say, well, the Bible's the only infallible authority. It's not the church or tradition. This is a very, very important issue about authority. But every Protestant has to interpret this Bible that they say is infallible, the only infallible authority. And when they go to interpret it, they start disagreeing all over the place. So the way God designed it was to have an authoritative church and tradition so people would know what the truth is and they wouldn't argue about it. So therefore, what the church says in their doctrine and dogma, infallibility is as trustworthy as what's in the Bible, and it's in harmony with the Bible.
Right. This is my question. I just get confused, so is the catechism, is that infallible? Okay, so
What do you have?
Car outside.
Oh, is it?
You said it was?
There's a what?
There's a car
The
outside.
catechism.
Somebody, who you think your mom or dad's here, or Chico's?
Well, it's
Yeah,
called...
Chicos, can we go?
I could very complicated. Different levels of infallibility. It's called the sure norm of faith, I think is the phrase.
Bye, dudes.
The Pope basically said everything in here is trustworthy that... see you guys.
Bye guys, God bless.
See ya.
Bye.
Is trustworthy as representing what the church teaches. Now, it wouldn't be... don't quote me on this, but... I'm quoting. I don't think it's infallible, certainly not at the highest level, not like a dogmatic declaration,
Right. Which is like how...
But it's very high authority, but I don't think it's the highest.
Right. Like how we call the Bible the Word of God. And it's like, the Bible's on a whole other level.
Yeah, it's
compared to like
inspired.
catechism and
It's
stuff.
inspired.
But that's confusing. Isn't
God,
it?
literally God breathed.
But like the catechism, like that's inspired too. Like,
Not like the Bible.
so just like different levels of
Yeah, I mean it's
inspiration and stuff. Because I mean, like infallibility.
it's a magisterial document, but it's not. There could be things in there that you could possibly disagree with and not be dissenting.
That's my point. Things that you don't have to believe. They'll
In the
explain it.
catechism?
Yes. They'll explain it,
Okay,
but you
right.
don't have to believe it.
Yeah, like,
Right, but then
like
that's
capital
still saying
punishment
that
is
you
a big debate right now,
Yeah.
where the Pope clarified that it's not in the same category as abortion. Abortion is intrinsically evil,
Right.
always evil in every circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Capital punishment is not the case, because God even commanded that in the Old Testament, even in the New Testament. Well, but then that's God judging, and that's another issue. But like personally, I believe you could have capital punishment in the case of terrorists and mass murder. And I believe I'm allowed to have that opinion, even though the church is saying today we're against capital punishment. But you're not required. Well, I mean, Pope Benedict said, like the year before he became Pope, he said states have the right to institute the death penalty if they think it's necessary.
Isn't
Because
it
it's
like-
not intrinsically evil.
Right. Doesn't it even say though, like, if the person being alive makes more threat to like everyone else than it is allowable? Like, isn't there something like then you can say it's okay?
Yeah, the idea, well, now we have the means to restrain them so they don't harm
Right.
society anymore. But then someone made a point on Facebook, we were talking about it, and he said, like, if you have a gang leader, a mafia guy in prison, oftentimes they're still running their operation from the prison.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're still having an evil effect. You know,
Yeah.
certainly the terrorists would do that. That's why I think a guy like Bin Laden or something, I wouldn't bat an eyebrow. I would have shot him myself, you know. So, because that's a guy who's an evil person. He's killed many people. So whatever, that was just an example of it's not the very highest.
That goes on the table.
I just like, you know,
It's not like Vatican II or you know, papal.
you know, like the Didache, like how that, like I still use, like in the classes and stuff, we still refer to that as being like we still use that as like to back up Christian beliefs and stuff, but it's like why the Didache?
Okay.
Yeah. Did I say it wrong?
Oh, I always say Tadashi, but I don't. I'm the
I
last
think
one.
it's dedicated.
I don't know. That's what I heard it called.
I'm
We
saying
do-
Tomato, I say tomato.
But like you, that like
Early
we
Christian book.
right, we use that to defend a lot of our beliefs, but it's not in scripture, so it's like, so it's not as
That would
it's not
be
the
true.
highest authority, but it's still right.
Apostolic tradition.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not to the authority of scripture, but it's still right because tradition says it's still true.
I mean, there could possibly be a false statement in there, you know. So you have tradition, when they talk about, now we're getting a little more technical, like you're one of the leaders and stuff. What they call the unanimous consensus of the fathers does not mean absolutely every father taught thus and so. It means it was an overwhelming consensus. So you can have certain fathers that didn't agree with it. But when the church looks at the fathers, it's looking at them as the whole group. What is the mainstream tradition that they carried through history? You know? Then you can have an exception to the rule, like St. Augustine believed too strongly in predestination. And so the church said he was wrong there. Thomas Aquinas didn't believe in the Immaculate Conception. And that was partly biological. He didn't understand the whole, like he thought that a soul came in 40 days or something like this. So obviously he wouldn't think it was human at conception because he thought it didn't have a soul yet.
Did he always believe that or eventually?
I think he
Yeah,
always
he did.
Yeah. But that was before it was dogmas. It was
But
like
that was some false biology that was part of it.
Well, Dave, you can help me do my homework. One of the kids at work asked me about the scapula. If it's effective and not what, and different scapulas say different things. What does the church teach about
Well,
scapula?
see, that's the areas that I don't know.
that's gonna be like
Emotional type stuff.
yeah, because like devotions like that,
I
those
haven't
aren't
really studied.
dogmas. Like you don't have to
Right.
believe in them, but
Like,
through tradition and like
Right, they're sacramentals.
Right.
However, the promises they make are phenomenal.
yeah.
Like, the promises wouldn't lead you to believe that they're like, well, you can take it or leave it.
Well, I know you have to cooperate with it. I mean, I think it presupposes that you're living Christian life.
Right.
If you backslide and become an axe murderer or something,
I was wondering what
it's
those
not
two
going to
are.
work the way it was intended because you haven't cooperated with it.
I
So,
See, there's this
See you later.
St. Bridget devotion that you do for 12 years or something. My mom was telling me about, and it says one of the promises is that like everyone in your
Mine's
family
still
will go to heaven, or like something like that. And that is like that's like phenomenal. So it's like almost hard to like, because it's like how is that not taking over their like free will and like you know?
Like,
or
imagine you
it's just,
guys
like,
want to get your instruments out and stuff. It's like kind of.
Oh, that's
or
the.
is it just like so much grace?
Speaking of